Welcome, everybody. This is the UIL Area Marching Band Judge Training. My name is Jerry Miller. I'm going to serve as one of your hosts today, along with
Mark McGahee.
We're super excited to be here with you. We had a chance to do this last year virtually, kind of coming out of COVID, and it was a successful way for us to be able to communicate with you and just have those conversations about how things were going, what we needed to be looking for as judges, kind of diving back into the season. So it's my hope today that we can continue to offer you some commentary, some things to think about. The first 2 hours, just to give you kind of a rundown, we have it divided into 3 parts. We're going to start talking just about judging ethics, the overview of the judging process for area, what our expectations are there. After that, we're going to dive into the music sheet for about 35-40 minutes. We're going to move into the visual sheet for 35 or 40 minutes, break down all of the subcaptions, just everything you need to know inside of that. Once we finish that process, we're going to take a little break. Our returning judges are going to join us. We're going to focus on how we manage numbers. We're going to talk about competition suite, and we're going to go back and do one more, hopefully with time, little overview of all the sheets. So that kind of gets you into it. We're going to start, though, with a message from our UIL Executive Secretary, or our Executive Director. Dr. Brad Kent did a great intro for us just to share a little bit with you. And so we're going to go ahead and roll that clip for you here in just a moment. So enjoy this clip from Dr. Kent.
Hello, my name is Brad Kent, and I serve as State Director of Music for the University Interscholastic League. On behalf of the thousands of marching band students across the state of Texas, thank you for your willingness to serve as a UIL area or state marching band contest adjudicator. These events are paramount in the lives of students, directors, parents, and communities across Texas. The success of these competitions is largely dependent upon the quality of adjudication and the consistent application of the UIL area state adjudication system. The information you are about to receive is intended to provide you with the best possible training to in turn enable you to provide the highest quality evaluations for our bands. This adjudication system was conceived by Texas band directors and developed through multiple years of study and testing, and is designed to maintain an emphasis on achievement in the areas of music and visual performance, all while reinforcing the educational priorities that are valued in our state. This training will guide you through a review of the key components of the UIL scoring system, with an emphasis on points management and the development of purposeful evaluations. Instructions will emphasize the effective use of the area state adjudication rubrics, or placemats as we call them, to score and rank the participating bands. In closing, I would like to thank TMAA and specifically Jerry Miller and Mark McGahee for the development of this wonderful tool to aid in providing the best possible adjudication experience for marching bands in Texas. Again, thank you for your service as a UIL judge. We hope that you find this training to be educational, informative, and useful as you prepare to adjudicate the contest.
All right, welcome back. So thank you for that, for Dr. Kent. We appreciate that introduction. With that, we're going to dive a little bit into the marching band workshop and some information you need. I'm going to take this first slide, and I'll kind of let Mr. McGahee bop back and forth as we go back and forth. So first and foremost, when we think about judging our groups at area, we want to ensure that the adjudication is based solely on the performance of the day. We don't want to base it on past reputations of the band program or of that director. It's so important that we are consistent when we're judging area. If you miss one, if you have a call that you just don't feel great about, don't let it impact the rest of your day. You have an opportunity to start again. And one of the exciting developments we're going to be talking about today is the use of competition suite. And with that, it really gives you a chance to go back and revisit some of those things. You know, we'd rather have that one mistake, that one group you missed, than feeling like one mistake compounds the day. And we're hoping that the use of competition suite at a lot of the contests, but as well, just your overall mindset as we get into talking about this will help you to grow from there. I also want to remind you that when we're judging, just as the performers on the field are on stage for the day, you're also on stage for the day, and there are people who are watching us very closely as judges. So it's important that we're not talking to judges. We finish our sheet, whether it be on a tablet or if we are writing, when we finish that mark, that we are done for the day, that we close that with that band, and then we can have conversations with others, and really not about the bands, but that perception can be really important. I'll let Mark take these
Sure.
next few.
Along the same lines as that, on the day of the contest coordinator will actually be reviewing some of those key points again, not necessarily kind of telling you, hey, here's the exact same range we're going to be in, but they will be talking about areas to say, some contest dynamics. You're going to have maybe a sprinkling of groups that could be some of your top contenders right off the bat, all the way spread through the whole show. So don't be afraid to put a number down, or all of a sudden give yourself some room. Then, of course, don't give yourself such a narrow margin where you have ties and things that are already the part of it. So you just thinking through using the rubric, which we'll be discussing in a bit, you're going to see quite a few ways to keep yourself grounded. Moving ahead, we have 5 divisions that constitute what the level there are. Always, and then you think through consistently, usually, sometimes, and rarely. Those are really the key words that you can keep yourself really grounded. It's something that keeps you going where the topic that you're thinking about and how it ties into whether the visual idea or the musical idea, those words should be just resonating constantly as you're thinking and seeing this group in front of you. The placemat is, of course, the back of the sheet. We use that term a lot, and hopefully you're becoming more familiar with it and becoming more commonplace. In many cases, I know as a judge, personally, I look at the placemat almost more, and I look at it first before I even get to the first side of it, where it actually has some of the key words along the way. Justifying your score that matches that area. You don't have to all of a sudden have a comment, of course, with the comments to match that same score that you put down, but it should be, yep, I was right there in the middle of this one, and that's what I talked about most of the time. That's where the number needs to lie, and we'll show you how you can massage those numbers to make that even more accurate as the contest plays itself out. If you're judging, you'll be judging a competition suite, and so you're going to love to see this. If you haven't used this before, it's a great tool, and it really kind of lays itself out. And I know Jerry will have a lot more details about that towards the end of our training. Speaking to your recording that you're giving, as he mentioned earlier, you're being on the whole time. It's their first time, and even though it could be the 30th group that you've seen, it's still their first time, and you have to say, I'm going to give you the most inspiring, educational, and accurate read that any would be proud to play for any administrator, or if all of a sudden all the students were able to hear it in the parking lot, it should be something that's not only encouraging, but gives them a really good snapshot of who they are on that particular day in their performance.
Well, I know for me, like I like to play the area recordings for the students, or at least make them available. Like I know through Dropbox or Google Drive or things like that. A lot of directors will make those available, and I've always kind of made it my goal as a judge, because maybe I wouldn't make all 5 prelims recordings, but I want to be that one that is available. I want to make the recording where, and we're going to talk about this a lot later, where I'm a fan of that band, where they can tell that I'm excited for what they're doing, where I'm calling out the areas where we have some room for improvement, whether it be advancing prelims to finals onto state, whatever that looks like. They want you to invest. They want you to feel like you're a part of their program for those 15 minutes that you're with them.
Absolutely.
I'll go on to a couple more things here. Make sure, and Mark kind of highlighted this already, that you justify the score by the comments that you're saying. Like, I think it's really important that he was talking about rarely, sometimes, usually, consistently, and always, that I'm saying that. Woodwinds, you consistently do this. Color Guard, this is consistent. And I've given you, in fact, I pinned it at the top of our thing, and it's over in the description of today's video. I gave you some helpful links. One of the helpful links in there is a list of synonyms. And as silly as that might sound, it's just, Jerry, I don't want to say consistently all day. What are some other words I can use for consistently? And I would encourage you to have that list in front of you while you're judging. So if you're like, I feel like I've said the same word, especially if you do have to use the sometimes category, if you do have to get into the bottom of usually, and you're feeling like, I don't really have a lot of nice words here, it gives you some options, I think, to just give that group some more commentary. Address all the descriptors. I think it's important. Imagine, again, if you have you've worked hard as a band director to have a great percussion section, and then the judge never speaks to them. Like, I think that would be a fault that as an adjudicator would bother us. We want to make sure that we absolutely speak to all 5 on the music sheet. We speak to the individual marching on the visual side, the ensemble marching, and what's asked of them. So just being sure that you cover everything evenly. I think it's harder in music because we can get trapped by one thing that's either really good or one thing that's really struggling. Just remember that while that brass section may be struggling that day, there may be a stellar woodwind section that needs credit, that deserves credit.
All students are contributing to the performance, and you're recognizing that. that, and you're giving them their moment to shine, that your eyes go there, your ears go there, and really help them out. I re-endorsement with that sheet. I judged area last year, and I did use that synonym sheet a lot. It was great having it there, especially as I got a little bit foggy of thinking about different terms. It was so helpful to kind of get a word that I thought was even more accurate for that group's performance.
Yeah, on the 40th band of the day,
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to feel like I've used these words a lot. Lastly, just be mindful of your mobile phone. I mean, I know it could be a big college football weekend. It could be a lot of things, but just be mindful of your mobile phone. When the groups are, I'm really conscious. I'll take it out of my pocket. But when the group starts, like, I'm really conscious to place it face down and kind of off to the side of the table so it's not in the way. And even if I do need to check it, I try and wait until a break. Whether it's checking in with family, if you have babysitter home with the kids, whatever that is, we understand that those things are going to happen. But just be mindful that we don't want the perception that we're texting other judges or that we're texting directors or that anything like that's going on. So just kind of be mindful of your mobile phone conduct.
Yeah, the optics are everything. They're real important.
Let's you and I kind of bop back and forth between these, but I'll start with this first one, which is there's no official style for marching band in Texas. It's not about a military group can't score at a level that a corps style or couldn't score where a show band could score. Any of those, I mean, done in any way. I often think about, like, what if somebody rolled out a show that opened and their opener was all military style and their ballad was corps style and their closer was like a show band thing.
Right.
Still, I mean, excellence is excellence. Regardless of the channel that you push that through, like, whichever way you do it is going to be excellent. And maybe I'll have you talk a little bit about just that equal, because you mentioned this already, that equal opportunity for success for all those groups rolling out.
Sure do. Here's a couple of key questions that came to my mind when I was listening to that statement. Does it provide clarity? Is it a style that provides visual clarity for the ensemble? Does it lend either positively or negatively to the musical performance? Like, it's a style where their marching style is so rigid you can hear the feet in the sound, or they can't keep up with the tempo, for instance. And then does it provide a style that all the performers can actually do? It is something where it looks the same, it sounds the same, and of course that's the visual aspect of it. You can have those same questions for the musical part of it too.
Yeah.
But I think it really, as Jerry said, again, to reiterate, there is no official style, where you just have to be able to ask the effectiveness of it and the excellence level where all students can perform in a very uniform style.
Yeah. Think about, too, recognize, measure, reward achievements. Let's break that down. I recognize it. I recognize that the trumpets are doing a double tongue passage. I recognize that the rifles are tossing triples across the front. Okay, I recognize. I measured it. How well did that go for the group? Did everybody catch the triple? How was the technique leading into it? Were all the trumpets able to double tongue with good tone quality and at the right volume? And then reward it. When it goes well, you go, wow, that was definitely, ooh, let's see my boxes. That's high consistency. Or, man, that was pretty spot on perfect. Or maybe it's over in the usually category. So, you're constantly using this placemat to make little mindful tick marks where you're like, oh, that's there, that's there, that's there. And it's almost as if you made these over the course of every impression of all the musical moments or the visual moments, and then you went back and you said, when I take all these points and put them in a scatter plot, so to speak, where does that end up? And that's where that score should be, inside of woodwind, inside of brass percussion, or inside of the marching ones. I also want to be careful about this next statement, because this is one of those where if you see something that is maybe out of the ordinary, you worry could be a rules violation, don't let it impact your adjudication. It's not about your adjudication. If you see something that's outside of the rules, make a note of it, and either after that band or on a break or whenever you can, get to that area executive and let them know, hey, I saw like a parent on the field doing this. Is that something we're allowing? If you have a question like that, please ask. Don't let it impact your adjudication. I wouldn't want you to get to the end of it and the area executive tells you, oh yes, I told them it was today, this person was sick, this thing happened, we've allowed for that, I've already spoken with the state office, and then you're like, oh, well, I was kind of negative about it on the recording. Just let the recording go. You judge the show that's in front of you, but if you see something that you think might be a rules violation, let the area executive handle that with the state office. Don't feel like you need to run the contest. That's not what you've been hired to do that day. A couple more things here. remember that we're teachers first and judges second. Our role is to be a teacher first and foremost. And I think that if we can ensure that we're teaching and teaching kids to grow, teaching programs, mentoring younger directors, right? Many of us on this are veteran directors. We've been doing this 20 plus years. Think about that third year that we were teaching and took a band to contest.
Right.
We appreciated that mentorship. We appreciated that person not only stepping in our shoes for those 15 minutes and working with the group and offering commentary, but they were also helping us grow as educators. And that's one of the most important roles you play as an area judge. Remember, too, that everything we write and say should positively enrich these young people. Our primary concern is their welfare and their growth. Okay?
Along the same line with the teachers and the instructors, it doesn't have to be necessarily with age, but let's say it's a program trying to really grow and be more progressive, for instance. And in some ways, it kind of represents the adolescence of their teaching, or maybe their understanding of a certain level of design. And you could be so encouraging in that one, or so deflating in some ways, and not dismissive. But you could say, "I see what you're trying to do there, but what we're asking the students is maybe have a lot more demand than we're asking you to on. But you're on the right track, and there's some really good ways to steer that." Where at the end of that conversation, there could be some thought-provoking questions that as a staff, they could really get a lot out of that, just like what you're trying to do to the students on the day of the performance. We're trying to give everyone, and it's a celebration. As many times as we can show it's a celebration, let's keep bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an honor. You've advanced from region to area, and that's an honor. And advancing from area prelims to area finals, the more that we're positively supporting the growth of that program at whatever stage they are, rebuilding, building for the first time they've made area in a decade, whatever that is for us, we want them to walk off that field going, that was a really cool experience. Because we know, while some groups, their goal may be to earn a slot in state finals, for many groups, just getting to area, getting to area or finishing in the top half of area is a goal for them. And so when they hear us supporting that and rewarding and measuring those successes, I think that's really valuable. Let's do a little bit of judge basics. I know many of you on here are judging area for the first time, but you may have judged other competitions. Even if this is one of the earlier competitions you've judged in your judging career, I want to take you through, from the two of us who have done this more than we care to talk about, a little bit of before, during, and after. What are some things to be mindful of as a judge when you show up at the site? First and foremost, familiarize yourself with the surroundings, right? How are the field conditions? What are things, how close is the audience to you? Make sure your recorder works. In competition suite, we're gonna have, and I'll show it to you later, we'll have a file called UIL test, and you'll use your sound test to make sure your microphone works. On a regular handheld, make sure that works. Identify yourself. You can write it down if you're a little anxious about the intro, if you're not. I mean, I think some of us, it's a little bit autopilot, but you can always say, my name's Jerry Miller. I'm judging to the area of music today. We are on Saturday, October the 29th. This is UIL 6A Area Z marching contest. And I always like to say where I am on the, I'm on the 35-yard line, because sometimes you may hear things and they're like, why did Jerry react, but Mark didn't react to that? Or Jerry thought it was too loud, Mark thought it was too soft. What's the deal? Well, often it's because one of us was on a side where maybe the speaker was facing, maybe it was just where the brass bells were that created that. So I like to give you that reference. I think that one's important. You want to do a few of these and add on to that?
And even before that, some things that I think about, and I have a backpack that is my judging backpack, and it's prepared for any type of weather, even though that day seems like it's going to be a sunny day, and then suddenly there's a cold front that comes in. I've got a jacket that's packed in there. Or the morning, the sun is coming over the visitor stands, and then I have a hat in there. I have sunscreen. I have sunglasses that are ready to go. So you're prepared for anything throughout the course of the day, not just the optimum situation where it's 70 degrees and there's no sun in your eyes, so you're prepared for it. Just think through that, about everything that you're prepared before you walk out the door that day. As you said before, additionally, the approach and tone of the commentary should be mindful. We've been saying that several different times. Judging through time, you could react to a great moment of the show. That should not be when you make your mind up. It could be right off the bat an opening hit, and you can't say, well, there's the winner of the contest. And to the course of time, or how the show is paced out, and maybe had a rough start because there was some kind of electronics issue, then suddenly it actually started getting a lot more honed in, and then you're judging over the overall encompassing, like there's an overall theme of this ensemble. Past these a couple little speed bumps that we hit, the overall ensemble was outstanding.
Yeah.
Or visually, we had there's a timing issue. Maybe they're getting used to how things sounded in the stands. Maybe there's a little bit of a tempo rub. And you know what? They settled in and they did a great job. All of those are so important. So you don't necessarily give too much credit, nor do you all of a sudden say, well, my mind's already made up because you had one mistake. But you are trying to be as observant as possible, because it is a live performance. Many things can happen as we're all trying to evaluate with the give and take of the situation.
Yeah, yeah. While we're judging as well, and I think we've kind of covered this a little bit, but remember that the recording is the primary means of communication with those groups. They're going to listen to your recording first, and they're going to not only assume how they did, assume what that score is going to look like, but that's also going to be a reflection on what we offered the program, on our worth and our value there. So just be sure that we're thinking about what that tone is like as we're speaking through that, and that how we say things is as important as what we're actually saying. Like, how are we saying it to them? I would rather you, and we're going to listen to some exemplars in a lot. We're going to listen to some great judges talking. And I think what shocks me the most, and I think you and I have talked about this, will be the amount of silence that you hear.
Right.
The amount of time that they're just taking it in, letting the show come to them, and then kind of coming back out. In fact, I think that I did a good lead in for us here. While we judge, it's not easy to listen while you're talking.
Right.
Let the show come to you. Don't feel like you have to give a running 7-minute, 8-minute dialogue. It doesn't need to be. Allow that brass moment to happen, then measure, reward, react back to it. During the performance, keep your comments succinct. Right? Try and be quick about it. I often keep, you were talking about your judging bag, like one of the things I always have is a little notepad, and I'll just write a single word like articulation or intonation. And then at the end of that file, I'll go back and say, hey guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we were doing here with intonation, what we were doing with that. I think that can be helpful. Remember, too, that you don't have that long until the next band. Now, one of the things I think that everybody's going to like about Competition Suite is we're not writing sheets.
Right.
If you're at an area where Competition Suite is being used, there's no longer a pressure to write sheets. You're just doing recorded commentary and locking in your scores. Now, I will tell you, if you're judging 6A area, you're using Competition Suite. That's been decided. We allow 2A through 5A to utilize it if they want. And I'll tell you, a lot of our area execs have decided to use it because they've seen it in action and gone, this is the way we want to go. So I'll ask your area executives to begin communicating with you, but that definitely changes the dynamics of the day. If I have a 15-minute slot, an 8-minute show, then I've got 4 or 5 minutes to really think through just my numbers. As opposed to thinking about writing a sheet with good handwriting that some of us have and some don't.
Yeah,
So.
I've lost that skill. Yeah, the recap portion, and that's an art in itself. It's kind of a summary to the best of your ability, like what Jerry said. A couple of key words that it's the overall theme. It was dynamics were effective. Marching is a little lackluster. We had a couple of moments struggling with excellence today in this area. Little key moments that when you get to the end of the line, those 4 or 5 things strung together, and then through the course of time, they can find the exact situations. But it's really good to kind of have those in that area. And then, as he said right after that, giving yourself enough time to just focus on, okay, now here's where I thought they were. Let's really kind of study that sheet a little bit, and you give yourself probably at least another minute before the next group has to be on, and that'll be great for you to really have that decisive moment in time where we are contributing to the competition that day.
Absolutely. I'll be brief on this slide because it's really just a reiteration of something we've already said, which is our words need to match the descriptors. There will be directors out there who, after one disagreeable comment, he didn't get it. It's like, no, he got it. She understood your show. She understood what she was saying. Listen to the whole recording. There may just be one thing that maybe you don't philosophically agree on. I want to mention this, and you talked about this, the run of the day and experiencing the weather changes and all the other things, but it's also, I think, our patience can wear a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so just being patient with those later groups, understanding, they got to sleep in. That's not always an advantage. Sometimes they get the heat of the day.
They get to warm up in the heat of the day before everybody else got to. So there's little factors that we don't see right in that moment. Oh, yeah, that actually was happening 2 hours beforehand, an hour beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of something to think about going forward. Lastly, use the placemat. Use the placemat. We're going to talk about it when we focus in on the music and the visual sheets. Use the placemat. Let it be your guide to really help you ascertain the score. I don't want you to feel like the score is nebulous or it floats in space or it's hard to pin down. It's a fairly scientific process once you start to use the placemat. So while we'll sometimes hear and or maybe have been guilty of saying in our careers, oh, that was a very subjective call. No, not really. Like a good judge, it's pretty right down the line, and it's maybe like a baseball umpire. Like, I mean, we may not like every strike called, but it's like at the end of the day when you watch it and they put up the little box, you're
Strike
like,
zone.
yep, that was a strike. Yep, that was definitely a strike. So, just being sure you're using the placemat and that scientific basis. My last two things on this, I'll just be brief on these, is just be as current as possible. Know what those trends are. Listen to recordings that people have done for your group. Practice with your own band, right? I mean, practice. I did it with a group just the other day. Just grab your phone and start talking as if you're a judge and let the show run. Listen to exemplars. We're going to hear 3 of them today, and we're preparing even more of them for you so you can hear great judges. What's the pace? What's the language they use? What's their tone like? To try and be at that level where you are the recording they play for the students. They're like, I want you to hear, I saw Ryan Johnstone earlier. I want you to hear Mr. Johnstone's recording for us. Like, I want to be that guy. I know that you all want to be that person. Lastly, just think about sharpening the saw. Listen to other venues. Be sure that you know what's current in the activity. Take the time to go back and watch DCI finals if you haven't seen it. See what's going on in Bands of America. If you feel like you're a little bit out of that loop as you're getting into judging a highly competitive area, or even if it's an area that's not familiar to you, if you asked me to dive into a 2A area, it's a classification. I taught 3A through 6A, but I didn't ever teach 2A. Right. So I might need to go watch some really great 2A groups. I'm going to go watch Tenaha. I'm going to go watch those really strong groups and go like, okay, cool, this is what that's the state standard. So don't be afraid if you're judging something out of your classification comfort level. YouTube is your friend. And let it help you see. Don't watch the groups from the area you're going to be in, but go watch some other state groups that are not in that area you're judging, just to understand, what to expect.
I know when I begin each season, it's getting back in practice again, and we all kind of struggle with that a little bit. Find a couple of key groups, and while the YouTube recording is playing, practice doing a running commentary, and it'll be like words hard to say, can't get them going, but your thoughts are there, but getting in that flow again, and it's good to practice, and that way it's a low stakes environment rather than I'll just let it happen on the first day of the first group of the day, which is not fair to that group by any means.
Absolutely.
So go ahead and just get back into the flow of the season again. It's here, and there's a lot of exciting things that are happening all across the state, and we need to give them our best.
Mm-hmm. We're going to make 4 quick points about ethics and the ethics of judging and make sure that we cover those with you briefly. The first, I'll just breeze, is affiliation. As you're getting close to the contest, do me a favor and read the names of all the groups you're going to be judging and read the names of all the directors of all the groups, and just make sure that none of them are your family members. I think you would know that ahead of time.
Would hope so.
That you don't have any connections there that you think could be problematic. Even as a secondary affiliation, just be sure that there's not a group on there that I wrote their drill a couple years ago. I did their music. I went and did their percussion camp. Just really be mindful. We want you to be as disconnected as possible from the programs you're going to see at area. So just kind of have that in mind as you're working. Be sure that if a director were to call you and ask you, could you come consult? Could you, to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't consult with your group. I'm going to be seeing you guys at area. I'm looking forward to it. Not able to join you for that. As well on the bias front, you might get to see a really stellar ensemble during football season, and you might be blown away by what they offer you. That's not a social media post, which is where I'm going to go here in a second, to say, wow, the so-and-so band was just incredible. Right. Like, you're inferring bias, and people are going to think that maybe you've already made your decision. You've prejudged area.
It's almost more what we put in print these days is even more powerful than what we even say sometimes. And especially people don't know the tone of the way it's being said, the reference point of it. And the best thing is just to step away and don't even say anything about it. And it'll keep us all in a better place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. On the social media front, just be mindful that anything you post. Here's how I think about it. When we're brought in to judge, if you were to ask a parent, who do those judges up there work for? They would say, oh, they work for UIL. They don't know that you've been invited through TMAA, through your record, and you're basically contracted that day by those executive secretaries to come in and judge for them. Those parents, they assume that we're representing the state on those days, and so it's just so important that leading into and leading out of it, that we're being positive with one another. I guess I'm okay with like a picture of the judging panel. Post that after the day is over. My office for the day, but after the day is over. Even during the day, like let's just stay off of the social media thing and just kind of restart the day on Sunday morning if you want to post, had a great time, Area E was wonderful, etc. All that's great and good.
There's another area that you may be talking about here in a little bit. Let's say you're there for that beginning judges meeting and the panel's there. Don't create a storm about a group like, oh, I saw so-and-so at a football game. You can't wait till you see this group, or I've heard this. Let's let everybody draw their own conclusion. I think it'll become real apparent within the first 30 seconds if this group is something that's a contender, but you shouldn't be a cheerleader for one group that day just because you happen to live in an area that happens to see them. Let's let it be as fair as possible for all the groups when they enter that day.
Yeah. Lastly, on the ethics front, just be sure that you're being very positive with the other adjudicators. If you question something that happens during the day, you can reach out to that area executive. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Brad Kent. You can reach out to Gabe Musella. Like, we're all here to take that feedback from you and understand what's going on. But we just want to be really clear that if you're disagreeing, if you have some concerns, obviously if it's an immediate concern, certainly you can bring that up. But if it's just more of a long-term concern about a particular judge, it's not the time to go to social media. It's not the time to even gossip with your friends. There may be something going on there. Just let us know, and we're here to support those adjudicators. These next 3 slides, and I promise these might be the only 3 slides I read to you verbatim today. This is the overall and overarching judging philosophy for UIL. So let's talk through that really quickly. The achievement level, as displayed by the performers at a given contest, shall be the sole basis for evaluation. Achievement results from the simultaneous considerations of content or responsibilities and the extent to which the students perform that content. Each judge must simultaneously consider both the what and the how. Each band makes a wide variety of choices. The UIL system, encourages and rewards the bands that provide the public with a sense of engagement and entertainment. The scoring system encourages and rewards innovation and artistry in performance and design. It also rewards a carefully balanced variety of all the important facets of design and performance. Lastly, the scoring system provides tools for teaching and positive criticism with the goal of improving each and every program in Texas. Proper use of the UIL scoring system will provide educational value for all. It'll allow each band to project its own identity as it chooses. All performers are worthy of dignity and recognition for their efforts. So when we think about what is our overall philosophy as we dive into these next few slides and talking about balancing the what and the how in those conversations, I just want you to be thinking about that philosophy. This broadcast is going to be available as long as you need it, and so you can always go back and revisit it. We're going to get into these next few slides, and then we're going to take a quiz, and I don't mean to make you nervous. We have about 5 slides and then a quiz before we get into the music sheet, but here's what I want to tell you. These next 5 slides are going to be so important. So we'll take probably about 8 or 9 minutes just to cover these few, and it might put us behind schedule a little bit, but these are so important to what we do and how we adjudicate groups. And so I'll dive into this first one, and then Mark and I'll kind of ping pong back and forth, but here's a little bit of balancing what and how. The intent of the bullet points. I happen to be holding a sheet here. These are the music sheets. On the front of the sheet, the intent on the front is to provide an overview with all the bullet points, things like phrasing, blend and balance, precision and timing. When we turn over to the back, and this is where I'm going to focus I'm going to talk a lot about the music sheet here in a little bit. We want to focus on these questions. We should, as judges, be referring to and reflecting on as many of these questions as possible in order to give the group the best read, the best opportunity to have a good set of information going forward as to how their performance went that day. Now, I will tell you 1 or more of these bullet points is going to stick out to you. Right. And that's normal. That's very normal. But just be prepared for what that is. You have anything you want to add?
I do.
To that?
I always find where I have that placement in front of me, the group's performing, and I just keep thinking, okay, what is it? What is it? And generally there's a statement that will pop off the page. Mm-hmm. And it'll be, that's the one. That's the one today that either that's putting us in a really special category or something that we're just a little bit lacking. And I think that you'll find that, keeping that readily in front front of you. And he said before, the back of the sheet, and many times the placemat is a great place to start if you're looking for how to keep yourself grounded on that day.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this. This question might be on the quiz. What is the triad of adjudication? The triad of adjudication is a threefold process that is impression, analysis, comparison. So in one respect, there's a large timeline. I put that on the bottom. For the first minute or so, as Mark said, the first minute or so, you're getting an impression of the group. This is going to be a standout box 5 always group. This is going to be a consistent group. You're getting just an overview. In that middle moment, you're really deep in analysis mode. You're asking yourself, this is what was asked of the performers. Did they achieve it consistently? Was it usually achieved? Was it always achieved? And then in the end, you're getting to that comparison mode. As you're beginning to formulate that number, you're starting to think about things like, well, I saw this other group earlier, they did this, but this is still a little better, and by how much? And we're gonna help you with some numbers management tools as we get our returning judges back, but just kind of an overview here. I also think, though, there's a smaller process where inside of any one moment, you get an impression, you go, woodwind feature. The impression I get is there are a lot of 16th notes. There's this analysis. How's it going? Is everybody playing the same volume? Are they shaping the phrase together?
It's a musical. Yeah.
Right. And then comparison, how does that woodwind feature stack up against either other ones inside of their own show, right? They might have a woodwind feature in the intro and another one in the closer. How do those stack up against each other? But then, how does that stack up for us in the day? What else about the triad?
Yeah, well, even on the same lines as you're evaluating, and it's hard because you'll have to be jotting this down. That woodwind feature, that one's a little harder because they were moving playing that one. The first one, I just noticed they were kind of standing still, maybe posed. Then the second one, that's a little bit more advanced. And you're going, I remember Group A earlier in the day, they also had a great woodwind feature, but I think they kind of did it just kind of standing in a block. So then it becomes this level of demand, simultaneous responsibilities. How much can I credit that, not credit that when you're going to head? A great memory is helpful, but also, of course, jotting these things down would be real important. Placement on the field of, wow, that was executed at, it was so effective, and it was behind the back hash, for instance. Different areas that you have to just make the notes about that I think that you'll find later on become very useful.
Absolutely. So you can kind of see there, right? We're talking about the rating. That happened at the region round, right? When we're thinking about the whole process, that rating happened back at the region round, right? We understood where they were, that the current sheets, and they met those components, the philosophy of went into. Now we're getting to area, and we're doing impression, analysis, and comparison. Now, one of the things I want you to think about is, and we've highlighted this a lot today, there are 5 boxes, right? It's essential that this system have uniform numerical treatment across the day of how those boxes work, because those performance conditions, and we've highlighted this a number of times, are going to vary. The morning could be really cold, the afternoon could be really hot, there could be storms rolling in, there could be lots of things impacting this, but we have to work as judges to have a uniform treatment of how this all goes. That delineated scale, those 5 boxes, and to dive deeper, those 5 boxes broken into thirds, those 5 boxes have been designed to assist you in that proper application of the scoring system.
You'll also notice on each of the sheets, if you haven't already analyzed them, not every box they're not equal symmetrically. Sometimes there's fewer points at the top level, like the really deserving groups. They get to have the always box. And there's sometimes it is intentional that it's broad, more in the usual groups where we think maybe more groups lie there. But let's say you're judging in a final situation. You may be using more of the top end portion of those where you have to focus on those thirds of those boxes to really help you kind of narrow down. But you'll see them if you haven't had a chance, really kind of study how each box is broken down. Like I'm looking at the music sheet, and it's not even the same all the way across. When I get to content, there's a different point distribution and a point total, and I have to realize they're not all equal the same in 5. They're very intentional of how they're designed.
Yeah. Like a little bit more on the 5 boxes. That proper application also requires understanding these things. And so really understanding, and that's why you're here, right? You're a band director who understands for your 3A, 4A, 6A band what consistently looks like, what usually looks like, and you have a feel for that, because I think that that's important to set those standards. The words that we attach to these groups are really important for these categories to help guide us. So be sure you're matching the description, comparing it to our standards, and then deciding where the group is. Are they in the middle, as you were saying, or are they more at the upper end of that? Are they more toward the lower end of that? Are they almost, you're like, they're inconsistently, but it's the thinnest edge of consistently to usually. That's why those thirds exist, to really help you pinpoint where those groups are going to set for you. Lastly, each caption box is subject to both a rating and a ranking. And what I mean by that is each one has a number, but that number also belies a group between other groups. So you're sending a message when you put the woodwinds of high school A at 150, and then you put the woodwinds in high school B at 140. Not only are you saying one is in the bottom of consistently and the other one's in the top of usually, but you're also saying there's about 10 points in between those. And we're going to help you later with something called value of a tenth. We're going to help you talk a little bit about what are those differences and how do I determine what those point gaps mean, because I think that as we begin to think through that, we want our numbers to have meaning. You're right, at the end of the day, UIL is still thinking about where the rankings came out.
The ordinals.
Right, where your ordinals set. But even then, you want that number to have meaning, right? If I walk out and I get, my sheets, or I look at the total and the recap, and I see that my group was all between 850 and 950, I know we had a pretty good day, whereas if I see scores between 500, but if I see 4 scores between 850 and 950 and a 1 score that's 350, what do I think about that judge? I go, well, she missed it. She didn't get it.
Right.
And we don't want that for you. We want you to feel like you absolutely got it along with those other judges because you were going back to these words, you were answering these questions with the descriptors.
Yeah, the sheet tells a story, and you see, okay, this is the snapshot from my perspective. First viewing, first impression, this is how I thought it actually played out for me in the balance of the ensemble, or maybe some inconsistencies.
Absolutely. So we're going to pause and take a quiz here in a second, and Ben is our camera operator today. Ben, if you wouldn't mind making this slide full screen here, you can take us off the screen for just a second. And there is your first quiz. Now, if you're like, Jerry, how do I take these quizzes? There are 3 different ways you can do it. If you have a device with you, a second device, like say you're watching this on your computer and you have your phone, you can hold up your phone and take this. It's 5 multiple choice questions. It's not hard. Right? You can do it that way. Another way you can do it is I shared in the information slide, I shared for you everything that you need to know as far as the in the description of today underneath that slide, and it says everything you need. But I'm also going to put in the chat, in case you missed it, I'm going to put in there one thing that's called important links. And inside of important links, you can find quiz number 1 in there. And so we're going to pause for just a moment and let you take quiz number 1. So go ahead and do that, and we'll pause here for just about 2 minutes or so. And Ben, you can mute us if you want so they can have some quiet here.